Hello and welcome to another segment of The Buzz on Politics. I'm your host, Martin Lopez. Today I am joined by Denver Cook. Denver, you are running for the St. Johns County School Board District 4, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. So you and I had a really good conversation earlier about just in general, what school safety means to us. And I think your approach to it is a little bit different. Your reasoning for running for this is unique. Can you kind of explain what actually prompted you to run for school board?
What prompted me is about decision-making processes at our district, and we are, credited as being the best school district in the state, but our state is 40th in education, so we have a long way to go, number one. Number two, the way decisions have been happening largely have been behind closed doors with administration, approved by a school board, with minimal community involvement or input. And when we're tackling really large issues, especially around school safety, curriculum, and spending, school construction, I think we need to have a broader approach to what we're looking at and get a broader number of inputs and ideas to the table than what we're actually seeing.
Right. So then from the parents and the teachers and everybody that you've been engaging with, what would you say is their number one concern regarding school safety?
With school safety, I think that it has to do with how do we stop a school shooter, and initially parents say we want to have big fences, right, and lots of armed people out front to stop someone should they do it. The pushback on that, and I think the bigger challenge, isn't about stopping someone who is already coming to shoot up a school. It's about how do we make sure that our youth grow up to not want to become a school shooter, right, and how do we prevent that happening? And that's where the real prevention needs to happen. And it's a cultural change that we need to undergo. Yeah. And we're not discussing how do we do that. The Senate Bill 7026, I think, has a lot of good things in it to address that part of it, the mental health aspect, right, the child development aspect, how do we catch people earlier. The approaches being taken by districts is all based on available funding from the state, and I think we need to take a harder look at what we're doing. It's not just about what money can the state provide, it's what can we pitch in locally to make sure that we get true outcomes to success to prevent this. How do we make sure that every kid has a youth resource officer that they can engage with, much like our DARE officers when many of us who are older were growing up. Those no longer exist for our elementary kids, and that is really a strong miss. I mean, it's an area that we're really missing out for our youth.
I agree. I think community involvement and it really, I've been telling people the entire time I've been doing what I do in my company is this starts at home. Those conversations that we're talking about and the community aspect of it, where people actually know each other, respect each other. We can have differences, like we were just talking earlier. We can have differences in opinion, but understanding that we are a community. And the safety of our children, whether it's in the school or outside of the school, is paramount. And so I completely agree with you that starting the dialogue early and being open to different ideas, right? Some of them are going to be good, some of them bad, obviously, but at least having that dialogue with people. And so what would you propose then at the local level, even going forward? What would be the first thing that you would want to really look at regarding the school safety plans?
Well, I think when it comes to physical safety for our children, they're our greatest treasure, and we all believe that. It's in St. Johns County. It's why everyone was moving there, right, for our kids and for that community. I think that there's a couple of very simple steps and approaches we can take. Number one, much like we have in our, and it's a little wonky here, but we have line items within our taxes, on our property taxes, one for fire safety, one for health and human services, one for transportation. We just need a new fund, and that's for school police or school safety or school security. I have gone out and done the math and spoke with our tax collectors and our property appraisers. It would take 0.1 mil for St. Johns County, and as the county grew, that same 0.1 mil would still be the valid number across an infinite amount of time to reach the $5.5 million the sheriff outlined is what it would take to put a deputy at every school as a youth resource officer in St. Johns County. Our current total millage is 14.98. 0.1 is not a lot to ask. Right. If you can't find 0.1 millage, either by cuts in other areas across all of the funds, or just by adding it to go from 14.98 to 14.99 mils on property taxes, I just don't see where your priorities are. This is about the county commission stepping up and doing something for our schools. This is about the school board leaning in and doing something, and it's about true partnerships, not just looking at how can I deliver at the cheapest possible method, because I honestly don't believe a security guard in an elementary school is going to provide the same level of emotional and mentorship and guidance as a youth resource officer does. That is a very specific field. I had a neighbor contact me from my community who's a retired youth resource officer, who after this latest shooting contacted people in the district and said, hey, I'd like to volunteer my time to come in to help develop plans because it's what I did, to work with you, and he was never responded to or even asked. This was a free volunteer opportunity that has been missed, and we need to stop missing these opportunities.
I completely agree. Coming from my perspective, I've done a lot of work with the private schools, and because it's an immediate community where they can make the decisions on their own. A lot of the ideas and everything that we've incorporated to include talking to the kids about certain issues, the parents are all on board. The parents are looking for ways to prepare their kids, without desensitizing them and without making it threatening. And I just feel like we have opportunities, whether it's in the private sector, the public sector, doesn't matter. If we all come together, like we said, as a community, then we truly can make our community safer, our schools safer. We just need to open the doors, basically.
Yeah, and to your point, one of the things to understand is our school boards in general say Tallahassee needs to solve our problem. I'm a firm believer that the more local you can make your decisions, the better they're going to be. We should have leaders who are making decisions locally that make sense for our environment. The environment at the schools in rural St. Johns County is a very different environment than the middle of Jacksonville.
Right.
You need different strategies and behaviors on how you're tackling those, and that's very localized. And to keep looking to Tallahassee and say, can you just give me more money and we can solve all of our problems? There's not enough money to solve every problem. It doesn't exist. It has to happen locally. The ideas, the culture, and the community stepping up and saying, we are going to do it differently. If you don't develop that buy-in, you can create as many school resource officers as you want to stand outside of every high school in America. At the end of the day, a kid from inside those schools, if they were not identified early and given the resources through both law enforcement, our juvenile justice systems, through our nonprofit providers who do much of the work, through counseling and treatment and mental health services, their kids are the ones who are on the inside. It will still continue to happen. We need to change culturally. We need to stop letting our kids have full-time access to social media so that they become desensitized, as you talked about. It's a much larger conversation and more complex than simply saying, how do I make sure a door is locked so that someone can't come in?
Right.
That's simply a wall, and as a former corrections officer, I don't want to take my kids to jail for school. I think it should be a positive learning environment where they can be, allowed to think, to explore, and to achieve their full potential.
Fantastic. I completely agree. So thank you for joining me here today. If people want to learn more about your campaign or make donations or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Well, quickest way is denvercook.com.
Okay.
Or, send me an email at denver@denvercook.com. I'm a really simple guy. My phone number, my email are all on my website. I'm always available to talk with anyone, anytime, and I really mean that. I want to engage with our community in a full fashion and have, in-depth conversations.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. For another segment of The Buzz on Politics, I am your host, Martin Lopez. Thank you for joining us.